even though that car is a 2011, we've still got like 2 or 3 years of warranty left on the battery system.
Hey, speaking of the lithium-ion batteries, did you hear what Elon Musk did in Australia? It seems that the Australian power companies have had a lot of problems with power outages and so forth. So Musk put in this year, he put in a system of batteries that literally back up an entire electrical power plant that powers a whole city. And within a few weeks of putting the thing in, they had some power outages. The longest one lasted for only about 3 seconds before his batteries kicked in. And they were literally able to run the entire grid off lithium-ion batteries.
As a matter of fact, along with that line, Bart, there was an article, 2 or 3 years ago about there's several towns in Alaska that the city has built big facilities with just regular lead acid batteries, probably because lithiums were too expensive or whatever at the time, that they can do the same thing. They can run the entire town for like 1 or 2 days in a pinch solely off these batteries. So, I mean, that's becoming a very realistic. I mean, now I'm starting to hear radio commercials for anybody who's got Peterson Dean Solar is the one I'm thinking of from listening to it on KFI all the time, where supposedly sometime early this year, the electric company is going to start charging people who have solar on there, and they're buying back the solar first for the cheapest possible rate from you, your excess, but at night you're buying electricity back from the power grid. These guys' idea is to sell you batteries that are maintain a full charge so that when the grid goes down or when the solar is gone at night, you're running on the batteries and you're basically sticking it to the power company again. And so they're paying you for any excess solar during the day after your usage and your battery is fully charged up. They're buying whatever the excess is, and then at night when you'd be paying, because you're a solar provider, you'd be paying a possible premium from the electric company to get their electricity back in your house. You'll be able to run off your batteries. I thought that whole idea is great. I mean, that's a great concept as far as I'm concerned. Okay,
well I'll tell you something. As speaking as someone who put in solar a little over a year ago, I know all about that. I'm mad as hell about it. And by the way, you know that the company I retired from, where I worked for 11 years, we basically, one of our main products was industrial uninterruptible power supplies, which are battery backup systems. So I have knowledge of all the technology. Unfortunately, the systems that we made, even at what I could have gotten it for as an employee, was far more than I could afford because they're industrially designed.
Sure. Okay, so I've only had this program for a few weeks here, and quite honestly, I've been so busy with other things, I haven't put as much effort into it. But I've been an Adobe Illustrator user 15 years, something like that, since about the time that I remember when Adobe first came out with it. Well, let me explain the difference. There's two basic styles of graphics. One is pixel-based photographs, paint programs, Adobe Photoshop. Adobe Lightroom is more of an editor than a creator tool.
So go ahead.
Pixel.
What you got?
Who's talking? Mute yourself if you got another conversation going on. And then
I don't. If I am home, yes. I'm not clear whether I'm going to be home tonight or not. I potentially.
Greg, it's Robert, I think.
I know, I got it back. So there we go. So the second time, the drawback to pixel-based is if I make something that looks good on an 8.5 by 11, and for whatever reason I want to put it up on a 50 by 60 50 by 75 billboard or something like that, the little individual squares, the pixels that make up that image, unless they were designed with that idea in mind, making it a humongous size file, they break up. And you see it sometimes where you see what looks like verticals and horizontals is easy. Vertical line and a horizontal line is easy because that's the way the pixels stack up. But as soon as you start to do a circle or a diagonal or something like that, and you start seeing the jaggies, as you probably heard people talk about them, The jaggies exist in all resolutions. It's just as the higher the resolution, the less noticeable they are. And eventually the resolution gets so high that your eyes don't pick it up at the viewing position that you're at. But if you get up close, just like if you put a magnifying glass up here on your screen or one of those little magnifying loops up on your screen, you can see the individual pixels. That's the difference. That's the difference of a typical photographic type image, whether it be created with a camera, again, pixels is what's recording that, or you've created it with a paint program, a GIMP or a Pixelmator or something along that line, or Photoshop or what have you. And then the other style is what's called vector art. And essentially what vector art is a mathematical process of generating the image based on the resolution that you're looking at. So as an example, if I put a point and draw a straight line between 2 points, I haven't defined I haven't captured the line in the size of the database. How do I want to say that? If I make a 5-inch by 5-inch square with, let's say, black dots in it, in a photo application, it's essentially .1 and the color value, .2 and the color value, .3 and the color value, .4, and so on for how many thousands of individual dots there are. Now, there are compression schemes that can reduce that amount down by a mathematical formula, but essentially it's a dot by dot by dot, just as if you took a pen tip and you put dots close enough together on a piece of paper that you can make it look like a line or a circle or a square by building the dots up. With vector art, you're establishing a corner and then another corner and a mathematical formula that says connect the two together. So the size of a box built with vector art, a 5 by 5-inch box built with vector art, is essentially the 4 corners and a color value. That's it. And so what might be 500K in size for a photo or pixel-based image could be maybe 20K or 10K for a vector image. Now, the drawback is it's a vector. It can't show everything as detailed, like for a face or something like that. But from an illustration standpoint, there's a lot that can be done with it. I know this is getting klutzy, but I'm going to give you a couple of examples here. This is Affinity Designer, and Adobe Illustrator has kind of been the leader in the vector art because they were pretty much the first ones that produced a product along those, like actually Aldus Freehand, I think, even beat Adobe out. They were around. They were eventually bought by Adobe Aldus. So PageMaker became eventually Adobe PageMaker, and then Adobe finally phased that out and turned PageMaker into InDesign to compete with Quark and a few other programs, Ready, Set, Go, and a few other publishing programs that are out there. Well, just like Affinity has brought out Affinity Photo, which is a direct competitor to Photoshop, they've since brought out Affinity Designer, and sometime in 2018 they'll bring out Affinity Publisher, which will be an InDesign or Microsoft Publisher publishing, a document publishing type program, but that's not out yet. The betas aren't even out for people to start testing because I've signed up to be on that list. So Affinity Designer gives you an affordable way to make vector-based art that can be sized to anything. When you first open the program up, their welcome screen comes up here, and the first thing they do is they give you a slew of samples. So you can see it's lending itself to what a lot of us would call hard edge illustrations. So as an example, if I take a look at something like, well, here, let's look at this one. As soon as I click on it, you can see the little cloud symbol there. It's downloading that file locally so that I'm not tying up. But you can see that that illustration is only 9.5 in size. Come on, download, and you're not going to download for me. Be that way.
There you go.
There, all right. When I click on it the second time, then it brings up, loads it into Affinity Designer here. So it's a nice looking piece of illustration art, the size that we're looking at it here on the screen. If I zoom up on this, give it a chance, you can see it's resolving right now. Because it had drawn the screen resolution based on 1, and now it's regenerating the screen image based on this amount of magnification here. And I apologize, I got a lot of things running on this laptop at the moment, so it's kind of on the slow side for us right now.
You got a lot going on your Mac there, Greg. So.
Well, I didn't have to go out and get coffee and a sandwich while I'm waiting here. Yeah, that's what it is. At least I'll blame it on that.
Yeah.
Have I got anything I could kill right now? Yeah, let's kill that.
Before you close out today, Greg, if you might be able to share some of the process of converting a bitmap to a EPS format, I have one that, in other words, if you were to take an EPS, convert it to JPEG, and then starting that point, show the process for turning it back into an EPS, because at that point you would have to define certain things, the process. Because as you mentioned, part of the issue, reality is, it takes a certain kind of file image to be appropriate for an EPS or an Illustrator vector-based picture.
Oh, shoot, even this is going to take a long time.
Yeah, you're gonna have to start it again.
Yeah, I think so. Just there you go.
Guess that solved that problem. Maybe after 5 years, it is time to get a new Mac. I just bought an RV. I have to wait a little bit. Okay, let's try this. By the way, that little program I'm using is called Alfred. You see it up there in the up there in my menu bar, what looks like the little bowler hat. That is a free. There's two versions of Alfred. There's a free version, and you can get it off the App Store, and you can also get a paid version that also not only does it search on your Mac, but it'll also search your Google and stuff like that. All right. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and go into what I was going to do earlier. So I'm going to build a real simple document and I'm used to doing stuff with Adobe Illustrator. So sometimes trying to get stuff back and forth. And everything that you see here, by the way, is totally customizable. You can choose to have whatever menus you want down. This is totally customizable. Whatever menus you want to show down here or over here. This can be on the left or the right hand side. You can see, just like most other Adobe stuff, you can switch back and forth between the various palettes. You can break the palettes off if you've got a big enough screen. If you're working on a big iMac, you can break the palettes up. Sometimes I have my iPad, but it's out in the RV at the moment. I have my iPad over here, and I move the palettes over onto the iPad and use it as a second screen on my laptop here. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the margins and turn off the guides. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is the premise I had decided to go with was, what if we were going to make ourselves a book cover up for a publication? So the first thing, this white artboard that you see right here is the size of the book board. So I want the overall background of it to be black. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a basic shape around it. And then I'm going to go ahead and fill it with black. Whoops, come on. Man, this is really slow. Okay, you probably can't see it on your screen. There's just a slight. Of course, I could change this to a white background. This will make sense here in a moment. And then, so as we're looking down the side over here, here's what they call the move tool, and the artboard tool, and the node tool. I'll come back to this. And the corner tool. This is kind of unique for them, the way they did it. The pen tool, that's the typical Illustrator's tool. The brush tool, or pencil tool, I should say, the vector brush tool. These are all various tools. Like I said, this is totally customizable. I'm going to go down here, and you see when they've got, if you can see it on your screen, they've got this little pop out here. That means there's more junk hidden underneath. So if I click on this, these are all the generic tools that are already available to me right now. And I'm going to go ahead and use the tier tool. And so all I do is just basically draw a shape. Now, of course, it's defaulting to black. I'm going to go ahead and pick another color off the CMYK listing over here. Yeah, we all like that. And let's fill it with like a red color, okay? And interesting enough, just like in Illustrator, I can grab this and make it wider. I can grab the corner and make the whole thing proportionally bigger or smaller. Again, like in Illustrator, I can grab this tool up here and I can rotate it. But then they have something a little differently. I can grab this node tool right here and grab one of these little corners. And as I switch this up and down, you can see it changes the shape. This is a little different than what Illustrator offers. This is a different way of doing the same thing. And if I grab this node tool, this is one of the mathematical numbers that's being recalculated as I move stuff around here. So that's kind of interesting. They have a lot of flexibility to do something like this. Now I'm going to show you something I'm going to do with the pen tool, the typical tool. Wait for it to catch up here. And with this particular pen tool here, I'm going to go with what's called the Smart Corner. And I'm going to fill that with the red. So it's presently using the same red on both. And I want these two to be the same, to be merged together. Well, you can see, I can see that line, even if I unselect it, that line is still there. If I zoom up real close on this, so that line's got a stroke width to it. And I'm going to, come on. The jaggies will disappear here in a moment. I'm going to go ahead and select the donut ring up here, represents the outside edge, and I'm going to make that clear so that it's no longer visible. So when I unselect it, you won't see it. Slight difference in the color there, and I probably got two of them picked up here by mistake. Yes, I do. So whatever this color is here, we're going to make that one the same. I don't know what I've done wrong there. Okay, then we can put something like, we can place a piece of art in here. So, boy, this is really slow. This is really scary. I was doing this earlier this morning, and I would have been done by now. When you speed this thing really used to that, it's really eating up a lot of CPU.
Yeah.
Man, this is going to make doing these difficult. This is going to make these difficult. Shoot. Well, anyhow.
Time for a new Mac, Greg.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe this is taking as long as it is. You know what? As soon as this comes back, I'm going to show you it's time for a new Mac. I'm going to show you the dummy one that I made up earlier today, or last night, I should say.
Greg, we did see that actually you don't have a lot of other processes running at the moment. Is that correct?
No, there's hardly anything running at the moment. In fact, just in case I had problems, I disabled virtually everything last night. So I'll have to manually go in and turn on like my calendar program and turn on all the extra little crap that I normally run. I thought I'm going to give myself as much room to work as I possibly can. And
what could be causing this delay?
Talk to these folks about this a little bit. There's got to be a better workaround for this, short of getting another Mac and that, because that'll be tough to do right now.
Well, no, while we always like to joke about that being the answer, I would imagine there's something else going on, because your interactivity with your Zoom should not be making the difference. Certainly, that's something you want to test as you work this through.
It's pathetic. No, because this program really normally cranks really good.
Right. So as you work this thing through, you'll need to also connect to the Zoom to see whether that aspect is any part of this.
Does the program that's allowing us to communicate with everybody.
Yeah.
Does that take a lot of memory?
No, it's my understanding the bulk process. Obviously there's processing at both ends to display on the screen or to capture it on the screen. There's the one I did last night with this. This is all, with the exception of the Apple logo, which I already had. It's a club logo. I already had something I wanted to be able to place in there. This would be a typical item that you could use, and this could be. And I'm afraid if I zoom it, it'll take 4 days for it to zoom up on us. But you get full access to fonts. You get full access to everything. If I come in here and select that, what's that going to
Hey,
do?
Greg, when you get time, try doing it in a fresh Mac OS account. Make a new account for yourself and try the same experience.
Or after a restart of the computer.
Yeah, I'll have to give that a shot. I haven't. Well, I did that last night. I disabled everything, took everything out of my startup items, took all the ones that, you know, don't put it in the login items, but have their own enable it login, took those all off, logged out and logged back in, and then looked at Activity Monitor to see what else was running, and had virtually everything turned off. And
but you did that because you had you experienced some type of slowness that you were trying to.
Let me at least go to their website.
Greg, did you go through that effort because you had experienced some slowdown?
I was trying to do something. I thought, well, maybe it's because I've got all these little, you know, Yes. But of course, last night it was working fine as usual. But let's go into Safari.
Obviously, you had to do a restart of that process.
And it should be like virtually nothing. Shoot, even this is taking forever. I guess it's good. Well, it wouldn't be my network because it should process fast on my machine and maybe just not display very fast to you guys. Okay, damn. Sorry about that, everybody. I don't know what the hell's going on. Anyway, this product is available from the App Store, which is my personal preference for buying stuff. If I can get it on the App Store, I'd rather get it that way.
And what would be the reasons that you go that direction?
You can buy direct from them if you want to. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And you can buy from the App Store. The thing I like about the App Store, these guys are real good. In fact, you can see I own both Affinity Designer and Affinity Photo. Here's everything else that's got similar results or mentions in Affinity in their names, in their verbiage or something similar. The advantage of buying it from the App Store is, first off, if you've got multiple Macs, we do. We have 3 Macs, of which 2 are realistic. I can run it on both of them for the same single license, because I'm essentially everything you get on the App Store is a family license for all practical purposes. So I like that idea. So if I had another, I probably wouldn't get anything for this laptop, but I could see myself conceivably at some point in time taking this laptop and leaving it out in the motorhome and having a newer laptop right here. But at least I can have all the same apps on the same thing. The only real drawback that the App Store has, as far as I'm concerned, is there's no way to get tutorials. Or excuse me, yes there is, but you don't want to pay, you don't want to buy the tutorials. There's no way to see the free tutorials. That's number one. And the second thing is, you can't get a trial piece of the software. Well, you can. If you type up here, Affinity Designer trial, or Affinity Photo trial, that'll give you a place to sign up for a free trial of Affinity Designer. That'll probably take about a day to get to it.
But my question was somewhat generic because there are differences, and it's not really all that clear what they are universally, how the differences are between purchasing a product from a manufacturer's web page as opposed to the App Store.
Right, because let's face it, Apple, I think, as a rule, gets 30% of everything that they deal with, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
One thing I can tell you, since I'm on their mailing list, Affinity's mailing list, when they send me out a notice that they've got an update, I go check the App Store and it's already updated there. So Serif Europe is the name of the company that makes this software, and they seem to be pretty diligent about having it available for release on their website and for release at the App Store and probably on the Microsoft Store as well for Windows folks. They seem to have them all together, and I've noticed in my experience that if something's sold on the App Store and it's sold off of the website, nowadays they seem to coincide with each other. It used to be there'd be a newer version available at the user's website before it would show up on the App Store. That doesn't seem to be the issue anymore. So nowadays, when updates come out, the updates seem to be available right away. And the cool thing is you get automatic updates. You can turn on the automatic app updates for the App Store. You'll come down, I'll sit down here and say 4 apps have been updated. And I can go back and I can look and see what 4 apps there are. I don't have to manually do it. So that's kind of a cool feature. I like it just from that standpoint. So here's another good reason. Let's say I toast this hard drive today. Well, remember the good old days when we used to have disc or we used to have CDs with all the software on it? So now what you'd have to do is you'd have to go back to each individual website. If I was still dealing with Adobe, I have to go to the Adobe website. I'd have to either have download the software and have my serial number to put in it. Adobe may, some vendors are smart enough to keep a record of your software serial numbers. I keep them all in a file, but in case I screw up, I would have to dig those out and go back and do it. Well, if I blew this entire drive away and just had my documents folder backed up, I could start on a brand new Mac, put in my Mac ID and my Mac Store password, and I'd be able to go to the App Store and download every one of those pieces of software, a fresh copy, right away. Serial numbers, everything's all taken care of for me. Apple's handled that all for me. To me, Robert, that's worth it just for that convenience right there.
Okay. All right.
Anyhow, if you want to try this software or the Affinity Photoshop software, do a Google search on Affinity Photos Trial or Affinity Designer Trial. You'll put in your first name, last name, and email, and click sign up. They'll send you a link that'll allow you to download a $30-day version. It's a full version of this software to try. And when you get to the last 3 or 4 days or whatever it is, eventually the software will start working, but your files and everything are still viable, and it'll give you the option to go ahead and buy it from them, but go get it off the App Store. I think you're better off to do it that way. Now, here's the best thing these folks got going, or one of the best things these folks got going for it. Let me widen the screen out here a little bit. You can subscribe to their YouTube or Vimeo channel. You can do it. They offer their tutorials on both. So I can click down here for Affinity Photo as an example. I've already just subscribed to it now. And if you've never subscribed to a particular channel, to unsubscribe is as simple as clicking on that button again. And once you've subscribed, in fact, let me do that again. Let me unsubscribe. Once I subscribe to follow a particular thing on YouTube, I can click this notification button. I've got it already turned on. Right now, what that means is whenever I would go to YouTube, I'd see a notice up there that there's 9 new files that have come in of channels that I have subscribed to, including several of these that you see are RV following websites that I'm doing because I happen to like these people. And then after I get bored of them, I turn them off. And here's a drone one. I'm trying to convince the wife that I need a drone. Yeah, that'll go over like a lead balloon. And so every time they update a video, and some of these RV people are updating them like every other day, and some of them even once a day. But when I'm following any web channel, all the updates are there. As soon as I go to the YouTube website, I can see what's going on. But that's kind of a cool feature. I like that. Anyway, as you look down here, you can see there's over 70 of these videos available, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's what I read. There's over 200 for Affinity Photo and over 70. And well, you know what? Let's just play one. At least designing from sketch. And that's just the guy who makes the software. That's not all the people that are making their own stuff out there. I'm just going to show a couple of minutes of this.
Does this video have any audio? Because we're not hearing anything.
Oh, you're not getting the audio? Sorry about that.
I just assumed there wasn't any.
I didn't, yeah.
What am I doing here to make that work? Gary, how you doing, Gary? We'll be done here in a couple minutes. I've got you. You're muted at the moment. Okay, great. No, we don't want to do that. I don't know why it's not panned through here. You know what? We got Gary here. Let's go ahead and go with him. I'm going to stop this share here. This has been a terrible morning for us, Gary. Nothing's working right.